Well, for the 8th time in the last 10 years, South Carolina women's basketball are SEC tournament champions. Welcome in, everyone. Appreciate you. He's Intern Joe. I'm Mike Yuva. Going to hopefully have a little guest here for you guys in a few, so stay with us. South Carolina taking care of LSU in what was an absolute wild one from start to finish, especially at the end. I mean, it took us about, 20, 25 minutes just to get through the last 2 minutes of the game. We will get into that. But I don't want to take anything away from what we saw South Carolina accomplish ultimately, which was being able to go out there and winning another SEC tournament championship. I said this during the game, Joe. I've been covering the Gamecocks since their national championship with Asia Wilson, that 2016-17 season. I'm very familiar what took place prior to that and what South Carolina really has accomplished going back to 2015 in particular with this SEC tournament. Because, again, there's only been one other year in that span in which they haven't gone to an SEC tournament championship. There's only been twice in that span that they haven't won. So I bring that up, though, to say there's been a handful of talented local players who have played for South Carolina who have had phenomenal games in big moments. What we saw Malaysia Fulwiley do today, the Keenan product, what we saw her today, I would put right up there with the best. Not only was she getting things done offensively, she had a nice assist towards the last, I'd say, 2.5 minutes, but that huge steal, obviously, it led to the fight that broke out towards the end, which, again, we'll get to that if you're just joining us as more people hop on. I don't want to take anything away from the game itself. That's where I want to start. But Malaysia Fulwiley, what she did today was absolutely incredible. She finished with 24 points, which was not just a team high, it was a game high. The true freshman stepping up in the biggest of stages when her team needed her the most.
Yeah, Mike, absolutely. No, she finished 4 of 5 from 3. That's the biggest one. And then obviously 4 of 4 from the free throw line. That's exactly what you want, right? Out of your star point guard that's coming up off the bench. She had been a little quiet in these last couple games, leading up to it, right? And against LSU, she matches up well, Haley Van Lith. There's just a better guard matchup for South Carolina against LSU in general. And then so it was Fulwiley's time to shine, right? She was a little microwave off the bench. And was exactly what this team needed, right? We talked about the matchup and how much that played into South Carolina's favor, but 24 points, that's big stuff. And, to say this was a rebuilding year, right, Mike, to think that this was a rebuilding year, after the freshies are gone and all of that stuff, to win in convincing fashion like you did. And obviously, you got to give credit to Camilla for yesterday too. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit too, the buzzer beating 3. But yeah, Fulwiley leads the way today, and it's exactly what you need in a game like this to prove that your depth is so deep that you could have your backup point guard come out and put 24 on one of the best teams in the country.
Well, let's start there. You mentioned the big shot that Cardoso had yesterday. Obviously, that is a moment, especially if this team continues to go deeper in the tournament, because you've set the bar so high that the expectation is, okay, not only to get to this point, win the SEC tournament, but to go far in the NCAA tournament. Yeah. What we saw her do yesterday, my biggest question for this team was, which team's going to come out? Are they going to be a team that comes out there and they're going to be still in the moment of what took place yesterday? And I mean, that's the challenging part about these tournament games, right? Not just the conference tournament, the NCAA tournament, is that you have to turn around so quickly, whether you had a good day, bad day the day before. Obviously, you have to continue to win in advance to go to the next day, but you could still have a rough day. South Carolina, they had a rough ending. They gave up. They blew the 23-point lead against Tennessee, but yet they came out today, as we would expect a Dawn Staley team to come out today and be able to flush what happened yesterday. Not just flush, but take some of the lessons of what took place yesterday to be able to help you for today. And I think being able to see Malaysia, again, a true freshman, step up the way that she did today, what that tells me is that this team did exactly that. I can only imagine what Dawn said to them after yesterday's performance. And not just yesterday's performance, go back to Friday. Dawn talked about it after the game. And I'm paraphrasing here, but essentially what she said was, hey, we got to wake up. Like, we have to wake up. And we saw that. We saw the impact it had on South Carolina towards the end of yesterday's Tennessee game, a game where it looked like, for at least 1 point whatever, 1.5 point seconds, 1.3. It looked like South Carolina was going to lose that game, but fortunately they were able to pull it off. So I think the thing to me, Joe, I know a lot of people are going to look at this week and they're going to be very excited. We see Martin saying SEC champions. I've seen a couple comments because, again, naturally, the bar has been risen so high in this program. It's not just, okay, hey, South Carolina, that's great. They're in the SEC tournament. Oh, they won a game. The expectations are higher, and I totally understand that. But at the same time, too, what this team was able to accomplish this weekend, enjoy that. Enjoy it, okay? They're going to have an opportunity to be able to go back to the drawing board, be able to get their bodies rested before the NCAA tournament comes up. Maybe it wasn't their cleanest performance. I know some people bring out, hey, well, maybe they're feeling the pressure. Maybe they're feeling the pressure. I think even though you have an entirely different starting five in comparison to a year ago, there were a lot of players on last year's team that remember what happened last year. They understood that they had a phenomenal season, but they couldn't get the job done. So I think more than anything is, yes, they understand what the pressure feels like, the majority of them, because they went through this a year ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, Mike. It's something that we've talked about with this team all year, right? Is it, are they, too good for their own good, right? Are they too good to lose a game, right? And I think yesterday was enough of a scare. You heard Dawn Staley talking about the shot. She's like, we were at that point, with the perfect season on the line, and it was Camilla to shoot it, right? If that's the way it's going to go, that's the way it's going to go. And so today they responded really, really, really well. Jumped out to an early lead and just held on to it throughout the game. They played with emotions. Obviously, the emotions bubbled over. But to be able to hold on to that lead, not self-destruct, kind of like you did yesterday, right? Shout out to this team and battle tested, right? Continuing to be battle tested going into the tournament only makes them better. And, that's kind of how they make up for, being, I guess, too good to lose a game, if you will. And, they're human, right? They certainly can lose a game, but they're playing well enough right now. And the depth that they have is really, really, really good. So it's almost harder for them, to lose a game, right, Mike?
And I think the other thing too, when you look at this tournament as a whole,
yeah,
in a way, in a sense, because and I put this out yesterday on social media, put this on Gamecock Central. We have the amount of people tuned in right now. I'm going to let you know right now, this is the most we've had for a post-game show. This is more than what we've had for football. So shout out to the fams, shout out to Gamecock Nation tuning in right now. We've seen South Carolina not just go through teams beating them by, 15, 20, 30, 40, whatever the case may be. They had to find a way to be able to win a close one yesterday. And when you look at what South Carolina has done over the last couple seasons, it's absolutely incredible. They're 103-3. 103-3 in their last 106 games. So I bring that stat up because those 3 losses, they've all been by single digits. Yeah. So you look at the situation that took place yesterday, and I said this after the game. I'm not a believer that you have to lose a game in order to have be able to learn a lesson, right? Some people believe that you have to go, oh, you lose a game, oh, you can learn from that. BS. I'm calling BS on that. You can go out there and go through what South Carolina did yesterday, be pushed to the brinks, find a way to win a game, and yet still be able to learn from it. Fortunately for USC, they were able to survive and advance. You advanced today. You're able to take care of business, and you're able to get a little bit more battle tested. Now, again, we're going to get into what took place towards the end of the game. I don't want to take away from what we saw South Carolina accomplish, which was being able to win another SEC championship. So we'll get into that because that plays a part when we look ahead to what's next for South Carolina, because Cardoso will not be available in the first game. I know ESPN, they corrected themselves. We'll get into that, but the bottom line is Cardoso, to our knowledge, is the only one that will not be eligible to play in the first game of the NCAA tournament for South Carolina. Everyone that came off the bench that was not involved in the fight directly, which, as we saw, there was no one. At least this is what's been reported up to this point. I don't know if the league will go back and watch the film and see if anything changes. I can't see that being the case. I mean, we saw what took place. They watched it for 20 minutes. I don't think anything's going to change with that. But at least South Carolina was able to find a way to win and you're not able, you're not going to have to worry necessarily about, okay, we're going to have some bodies coming off the bench. They're going to have some bodies. It stinks that you're not going to have Cardoso, but it is what it is. Having said that, today against LSU, I think this was a statement, statement to the rest of the country, because we've heard a lot, and I know it bothers some Gamecock fans, but let's just call for what it is. LSU's the defending national champs. There's a lot of notoriety that will come with that. And we saw that this season, right? And not only that, Angel Reese, she goes on. She's the SEC Player of the Year this year, okay? I know a lot of Gamecock fans, they cannot stand LSU. They can't stand Mulkey. I get all that. But that aside, those are the facts. So going into a game like today, you're South Carolina, you're undefeated. You're 31-0 going into a game like today. And it felt like that there was a lot of attention on LSU just because of some of the names, the fact that they were the defending national champs. Oh, LSU, man, maybe they'll find a way to pull off the upset. Man, South Carolina, the wheels almost came off yesterday, but that wasn't the case with the Gamecocks today, Joe. And I felt like what that shows me is when we talk about these pressure moments, this is preparing this team to make a deep run in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of lessons, they're taken from yesterday, and then obviously today, plenty of lessons to be taken from this one as well. But from a basketball standpoint, you obviously don't want the fight to overshadow any of the basketball. As you mentioned, Mike, winning 8 of their last 10 SEC titles is something that is really, really needs to be celebrated, right? But it was, Malaysia Fulwiley, right? When you needed the depth to come in clutch, they did, right? Fulwiley off the bench, 24 points. She finished 8 of 12 from the field, 4 or 5 from 3, as we mentioned. Malaysia Fulwiley, we mentioned how South Carolina matches up well against LSU with the guards too. Haley Van Lith. I mean, personally, I don't think Haley Van Lith is a great matchup against South Carolina's guards. Any of them, right? Fulwiley, Pau, Johnson, either of them, right? I just don't. I think Van Lith is more of an offensive guard. Likes to shoot the rock a little bit more. So she doesn't have, and at LSU too, Flage, a little bit more of an offensive guard as well. They just didn't have the defensive firepower to contain such a guard-heavy team in South Carolina, right? We know how good Dawn Staley's guards are because she was a guard herself. We saw the emergence of Pau. She had an even better year after being the Pac-12 Player of the Year, right? Johnson's coming off great off of surgery, and then the emergence of Fulwiley. It was a guard performance today, and then Fulwiley just had one of her days, right? And that should excite fans too on what's coming, right? We know that Pau's coming back. Cardoso might also be coming back. This team is going to return a lot of people next year, but then also you have a young gun like Fulwiley who just dominated in one of the biggest games of the year.
And I think too, Joe, and I'm looking at some of the things that we saw today and going back and looking at the box score as well.
Yeah.
What I like about South Carolina is that you look at some of the players, Chloe, right? Shot might not be going down necessarily, but she continues to find ways to continue to impact the team. We've talked about this with Michi Johnson from a men's basketball standpoint, but when one player might be having an off day in some shape, way, or form, it could be from a scoring standpoint, it could be from the free throw, whatever the case may be, other players are stepping up. And we know that when you look over the last couple of years, the job that Dawn has done from a recruiting standpoint, they're always one of the top in the country when it comes to recruiting classes. Like, that doesn't surprise anybody. But the fact that she's been able to not only bring in new players, but talented players and having them gel so quickly to being team-oriented. I'll use Malaysia, for example. Yeah. Going back to my Watch Fox days, covering Malaysia at Keenan and seeing the things that she was doing, going back to the fact that she was playing on the varsity team as a middle schooler, and she was the star. She was the star. So the fact that she's been able to come in and she's been able to find a role quickly and understands, hey, this is what I need to do to help my team. And today, she was able to not only help her team, but boy, without her, South Carolina doesn't win it. They don't win today without Malaysia Fulwiley. She did her job, but this has been something where throughout the course of the season, the team, Dawn, the players around her teammates, they continue to believe in her because she's earned their trust. She's not just going out. And again, the reason I'm using Malaysia is because she's a local girl. I know so many people, including myself, had the opportunity to see her throughout high school, going back to her middle school days. And she was always the go-to player. That's what it looked like today. That's what it looked like. She was going up against LSU in freaking Greenville in the SEC championship. And it looked like the Malaysia Fulwiley that we know from her Keenan days, but she did that as a true freshman on the biggest of stages yet in her career.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Mike. Huge stuff from the freshmen. And, the pipeline continues, right? Good guards coming out of South Carolina. And with Pow Pow coming back, next year's team gets even better, right? They still have a job to finish this season. And, we saw today what can happen when, they respond back from a game that they probably should have lost or didn't play the best, right? The theoretical loss in their mind, right? To Tennessee, so they came out red hot, gave LSU everything, all that and more, and we're able to hold on to the lead. And again, we're going to get to the biggest story of today's game. And obviously it's unfortunate that the brawl takes, headlines over the basketball, but here we are, Mike.
Well, here we are indeed. South Carolina, if you're just joining us, they win their eighth SEC tournament championship in program history. And I go back and I shared this today. on Gamecock Central. I go back to a quote that Dawn Staley had back in 2015 when South Carolina defeated Tennessee to win their first SEC tournament championship. She said, quote, "Cutting down the nets is something that we want to do very often. That's at the SEC tournament championships, that's at SEC regular season championships, and also the elusive national championship." Since that comment, South Carolina has gone on to win 7 SEC tournament titles, so 8 in total, 6 SEC regular season championships, and 2 national championships. And oh, by the way, because of the COVID season and the 2019-2020 year, they also had the unanimous number 1 vote, which you saw that banner that hangs from Colonial Life Arena since the Gamecocks weren't able to compete in the NCAA tournament that year because of COVID. So, look, what they've done since the beginning of things, and I know it goes back before that too, right? I mean, the players that Dawn recruited before that time period and the players that were really the foundation of it. But the fact that they've been able to continue the success at such a high level, it's absolutely incredible. It's absolutely incredible. But again, it goes back to moments like today with the Malaysia Fulwiley and the younger players and the sophomores that have come in, and they continue to find ways to make an impact, yet they earn the trust of their teammates. They're not just going out there saying, hey, you know what? I was the best player in high school. I was the best player in my state. I was Miss Basketball, whatever the case may be. You get here, you check your ego at the door. And I think that more than anything needs to be that needs to be applauded by this team. The fact that those players checked their ego at the door, came in here saying, you know what, this is what we need to do. So, Joe, we talk about that. Let's get into it, right? The elephant in the room. At the end of the game, all hell breaks loose. Malaysia, let's go back to the play. Malaysia comes up with a huge steal. As I mentioned before, we've seen a handful of local stars over the years make big plays for the Gamecocks. And not just big plays, but big play after big play in big game moments. What Malaysia did today, I'd put it right up there. She has the steal, and then all hell breaks loose. And I credit Cardosa for coming over and being a hell of a teammate. That's what you want. I know LSU fans are going to look at it differently. That's what you want. You're going to touch my player, I'm going to come on over, and I'm going to throw you out of the club. I mean, that's essentially what she did. She came in there, said, weight room, son, and threw her out the club.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, there were ejections. Players are coming off the benches. Depending on if you finished listening to the broadcast, for those watching right now, whether it's on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, /X, we appreciate everyone. Massive crowd right now. We have over about 1,700 people watching live right now. So wherever you're watching, we appreciate it. It's pretty good right now.
Yep.
After that, the ESPN broadcast reported that the players that left the bench for South Carolina, because we're not going to worry about LSU because we cover the Gamecocks. The players that left the bench, along with Cardoso, would be ineligible for the first round of the playoff. That's not the case. They corrected themselves because, again, if you didn't listen to it, maybe you listened to that part, you walked away, went to the bathroom, got yourself a soda pop, I don't know. But they mentioned after the fact that those players who left the bench will not have to miss the first game. Only Cardoso will have to miss the first game because she was involved in the fight. I do say this, though. What will happen is the league will go back. The NCAA will go back. They'll watch the tape. We know that they watched the tape in live time when we were sitting there waiting 20 minutes to figure out what was going on. But they will go back just to double check everything. But I think what will happen is South Carolina will just be without Cardoso for that first game. It stinks. I hate it for them. But at the same time, too, it could have been much worse. Fortunately, I mean, Gamecock players are going to have the backs of their teammates. Fortunately, the players that did come off the bench, they didn't do anything to get themselves in a position to get themselves suspended moving forward. But that's where we stand today.
Yeah,
it was garbage. The way that game was officiated, I felt like it was inevitable that we were going to get a situation like that. You had fans coming out of the crowd. I've covered that tournament multiple times. I've never seen anything like that. Credit to the law enforcement and the security there for quickly grabbing not just the gentleman that hopped onto the court, but there was two gentlemen, I believe, and that, at least from the broadcast standpoint, I don't know if there was any more, that the security stopped as soon as they hopped over from the stands, because players on both sides, LSU, South Carolina, they shouldn't have to worry about that. They shouldn't have to worry about their safety while they're playing a game. The whole court storming thing, you can't even compare that to this. No, you're in the heat of the moment. You're playing a basketball game, and you got people. Fortunately, security hopped in, law enforcement hopped in, because not trying to be dramatic, but in the world we live in today, you can't assume anything. And fortunately, everything was able to, get taken care of. And it stinks that Cardoso got ejected, but fortunately, it wasn't much worse for the Gamecocks in the sense of multiple players being ejected moving forward.
Yeah, Mike. No, absolutely. Wild scenes there in Greenville. Really tough to have Cardoso, ejected and just the way it goes, right? But, the whole game, was kind of chippy and edgy. Each team was kind of, trying to get that extra edge, right? We knew it was going to be chippy. These are two teams that don't like each other. Good old-fashioned rivalry, right? And so it kind of just bubbled over, right? When Flage, was going up floor on Fulwiley with the jersey pull, that's when it kind of escalated. And then Ashlyn Watkins going to the bench. That's always a dangerous situation, right? When you have two teams kind of walking past each other after a dead ball foul that's like that, right? That's a little chippy. We know there are going to be some words exchanged. So Ashlyn Watkins gets a bump on the way by, and then Camila Cardoso comes in and stands up for her team, plain and simple, right? Does her job and whatever anyone would ask your teammate to do in that situation, Mike. Like you said, just weight room, pretty much, right? Yeah. Standing up for your team. I don't have anything against that. I think in the heat of the battle when LSU and again I've seen the clips of the hair pulling and stuff like that, and I've also seen people in the comments saying that it was going both ways, right? I haven't seen the both ways things, but I'm sure just in general. It was kind of a dirty game. Everyone was playing, trying to get that extra edge, pulling jerseys, whatever it may be, right? But I think, you can't really knock anybody for standing up for their teammate, and especially when, LSU had been the more vocal team, and so I'm never going to knock anybody for standing up for their teammate like Cardoso did. I just don't. I don't think there's any. That's just emotions bubbling over, right? And shout out, like Mike, like you said, to the law enforcement and the security in the arena and all the coaches that got involved and made sure it didn't get any worse, right? It was just kind of what it was, a shove and nothing else. So credit to all those people who were involved and were able to break it up, right? And then obviously I think, with the officiating afterwards, it's really, really, really hard in the moment to get all of that right. I think there were scrolling through Twitter as they were kind of calling it. It's like, what the heck was Pow Pow doing? She was at the scores table and all of this. So, it's really hard when you have that many. I mean, the refs had a pen and paper out there trying to get everything down, right?
It was unbelievable. It was like a grocery list.
Exactly. So it's hard to relay all that information through the broadcast.
Here's the good thing. You try to look at the glass half full. You try the best you can.
Yeah.
The fact that Cardoso will be suspended for the first game, and no disrespect to the team that they'll be playing in the first round, but you expect South Carolina to win this game. That game. What you hope for more than anything is that South Carolina, Dawn Staley, is going to be able to use this as a teaching moment for her players. Because what was fortunate for South Carolina in that moment, again, trying to look at the glass half full, what was fortunate for South Carolina in that moment is, yes, it was still somewhat tight, but they had some wiggle room. It wasn't like it was a 2-point game, 3-point game. Cardoso getting ejected in a situation like that changes everything. And I'm sure what Dawn will do, she'll go back this week. She'll talk to her players. She'll say, hey, you know what? You have the backs of your teammates. That's exactly what I would do. But at the same time, too, we're in the tournament. This isn't the regular season anymore. You need to be able to flush that, because what's going to happen is this: what's going to happen. The further South Carolina goes into this tournament, the NCAA tournament that we expect them to go far, you don't think there's going to be players now, especially from maybe some of these smaller schools, that try to get under their skin? They're going to try to do it. They're going to try to do it. So you have to be ready to go and understand that's what's going to happen. And that's okay. It's okay. Use this as a teaching moment. Use this as a teaching moment. You are fortunate enough to be able to get the win. You're going to lose one player. Okay, it happens. But fortunately, the players that came off the bench, they're still going to be ready to go. So, look, I get the frustration from this fan base, and rightfully so. I totally get it. I totally understand it. But here's the deal. It's over with now, in the sense that you beat LSU. You beat LSU. You have to move forward now, because anything about LSU, it's not going to impact directly, could impact indirectly with Cardoso being out in the first round, but it's not going to impact South Carolina moving forward now. And I'm sure that's the message Dawn is going to have to her team, and that you have to understand now, okay, look, undefeated. Yeah, there's pressure. There's that target on their back. They've been one of the best teams in the nation for the last couple of years. One of the best teams in the nation. There's going to be teams that are going to be looking at South Carolina, trying to do what they can to get under their skin. You have to, once you get to the NCAA tournament, you have to be able to flush it.
It's part of the game. It really is part of the game, especially against a team like LSU, right? That's part of how they play basketball. Mike, you're a New England Patriots guy. Bill Belichick let them celebrate because it helped them play better, right?
Yep.
We know what Coach Mulkey's doing, right? She's letting them have personality, and Dawn does the same thing too. And granted, South Carolina's, it's not as amplified as LSU's are, but they still have an element of personality and getting into it, and playing that extra edge. It's fun. It's part of the game, and you're trying to do whatever you can to knock them off of their game, right? So it's part of it. It really is, and how LSU, that's part of how LSU plays. And so to beat them, you're going to have to beat them at their own game a little bit without, getting, over cautious. Right. So I think South Carolina found a good balance. And then, when emotions boiled over, they did. And that's just an unfortunate part of it.
Real quickly. I mean, I've been covering Gamecock women's basketball since 2016. And I know that this fan base, especially when it comes to women's basketball fans, they are something else. We have just set a new record. It actually just broke the record the night Spencer Rattler signed to South Carolina and committed to South Carolina. We have over 2,000 people watching live right now. Going back to my days at Watch Fox, I mean, the number that this would do, I mean, this would blow out whatever Wolo, ABC. I mean, they were usually, I don't want to take any shots at, but point being is, from a rating standpoint, I mean, this is right up there. So thank you. Thank you to everyone that's watching right now. Bottom line now, Joe, let's move forward. South Carolina wins today. They win today. You're getting ready now. You'll probably have the watch party tomorrow at CLA, trying to figure out, okay, who you're going to be playing and all that. If, and I've seen a couple brackets, if there's a possibility to play LSU again, would you like to see South Carolina do that? And obviously there could be possibilities a possibility, but I'm talking in the same region. Would you like to see that matchup?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. Right, Mike? It's must-watch TV. I think, if you're South Carolina, you want to try to avoid it. I think playing, a team 3 times is tough. It's hard to sweep all 3 in basketball, or just really any sport. To beat a team 3 times is tough. So, I mean, I think it would be good, television, a really, really good basketball game too. Because again, after you play people, you know their tendencies, stuff like that, what they're trying to go towards. I think it would be a really darn good basketball game. But I think if you're South Carolina, right, you want the smoke after that, sure. But I think if you want to be, in terms of preference, and granted, you're undefeated at the number one, like the undisputed number one team in the country. I don't think you're scared of anybody. But would you rather, not be in the same regional as LSU? Probably, but again, you'll probably match up with them somewhere down the road, right? If these two teams are as good as they say they are, and we know South Carolina is, and how good LSU is, they will probably see them somewhere down the road, regardless if they're in the same region or not.
So all eyes will be on tomorrow. Wait to see where South Carolina will be headed to. I know that a lot of Gamecock fans would love to make sure that they're not going too far away. I mean, we remember the nightmares. I say nightmares, I'm talking from a traveling standpoint because this fan base travels extremely well. And I know regardless, even if they have to go out to Washington, that many of them will find a way to still do that. But obviously, you'd like to see them stick around the area because we've seen this. I mean, shoot, I remember 2 years ago being in Minnesota for the Final Four and the fams coming out there. And they were loud. They were a big crowd. I mean, everything that you expect from a South Carolina women's basketball fan standpoint. All right, going through some of the comments. If you guys have comments, whether it be about the fight at the end, whether it be about the game in general, performances just this weekend, the shot from Cardoso yesterday, whatever you have, let us know right now. We have over 2,200 people watching live, whether it be on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, on all platforms combined right now. That is smashed. That has smashed any GC live program that we have ever done, including the night that Spencer Rattler committed to South Carolina, as well as any of the post-game shows that we've done. So thank you to every South Carolina fan that's tuned in. Maybe there's some people that aren't fans and they're just watching. But, hey, we appreciate you guys as well. No question about it. Let us know what you guys think.
Yeah, you were talking about the comments. You asked me, do you want to see LSU again? There are a lot of people in these comments that want to see Caitlin Clark in Iowa, and I don't blame them, right? Especially after last season, what happened in the Final Four, and all of the hype that Caitlin Clark's been getting. I'm sure Gamecock fans certainly want to see, Dawn Staley and their squad want to ruin Caitlin Clark's victory tour.
Well, here, let's go through some of these comments here. Let's see them in the Final Four. Josh talking about LSU. Certainly, Gamecock fans would say, sign me up for that. Make it to the Final Four and then have an opportunity to play a team. They've already played twice. And you mentioned that, Joe. And I'm sure many people that are watching would agree with you. When you have to play a team 3 times, regardless of how good you are, it's difficult to beat a team 3 times. But certainly, South Carolina has the talent to do so. But if you were going to see another team like LSU or any of the teams, right? It could be Tennessee for all that. I mean, we'll see if Tennessee's maybe in the same stuff like that. What I'm trying to get at is you'd like to not see that team until later on. Let's see. Chris mentions, well, I guess LSU star player's mother lost a son to Greenville County Sheriff and her daughter. Okay, I'm not going to get into some of that. No, let's see. Scott says, let's talk about the legacy of Take Talent and winning we have in this program. We are blessed. Scott, no question about it. I wrote about it this morning on Gamecock Central. Again, if you're not a subscriber to GC, I'm telling you, there's a lot of fams out there. Maybe you're not as familiar with Gamecock Central. It's not just football recruiting. It's not just men's basketball. It's not just baseball. We have women's basketball in there as well. And I've been looking down at my phone. Hope you guys don't think I'm being too disrespectful. I know I'm a Yankee, but I've been looking at my phone because Markeisha Grant, who's going to be helping us out throughout the tournament, she is in Greenville. She was going to hop on with us, but she said the celebration right now is so loud that you wouldn't be able to hear her. So we're going to have Markeisha on. We're going to be doing GC Live post-game shows throughout the NCAA tournament for both the men and women's. We're going to be looking into doing that for men in the SEC tournament coming up this week. The GC crew, Joe, myself, and Jack, we're going to be heading over to Nashville in the next couple of days. So we'll have plenty of men's basketball coverage. But don't forget, we also have Chris Welbon, who does a phenomenal job. One of the best. I would say David Cloniger and Chris Welbon are the 2 best when it comes to covering women's basketball here for many, many years. Pete Argavelli does a phenomenal job for the Associated Press as well. But Chris Welbon has done a phenomenal job, and we'll have Chris in there as well because hopefully there's going to be plenty to talk about when it comes to women's basketball in the next couple of weeks here in Columbia, South Carolina. And quite frankly, hopefully there's a lot to talk about from just a basketball standpoint, because like I mentioned, and many of you remember this, that 2016-17 year, that magical year for both women's and men's programs. That was my first year down here, and what a time it was. What a time it was to be in Columbia, South Carolina. And I mean, what we're seeing right now is absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. Burley says, let's talk about 103
It's
and
ridiculous.
3.
It's crazy. It's crazy. 103-3 in the last 3 seasons for Dawn Staley. That's outrageous, Mike. That is, I mean, I don't care who you are, what sport you're playing in. I don't care if you're playing chess, dice, whatever. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. To go 103-3 in your last 3 seasons, it's royalty stuff from Dawn Staley and the Gamecocks. I mean, unheard of, right?
And the most impressive thing to me about that, Joe, and we're going to talk about this, I'm sure, over the next couple of days, because we'll have a little bit of a gap before the NCAA tournament starts up.
Yep.
But the reason why Dawn Staley deserves to be right up there, not just for SEC Coach of the Year, but National Coach of the Year, you have an entirely different starting five. And I know that this fan base is very optimistic, but if we just take a step back, let's just take a step back before the start of the season. Realistically, outside of people in that locker room, realistically, how many people would have thought South Carolina would be 32-0 with this year's roster after losing the talent they had from a year ago, win the SEC regular season title, win the SEC tournament title, and head into the NCAA tournament as the undisputed number 1 overall seed in the tournament? I know they'll officially announce it in the next 24 hours, but who would have thunk that? Really, if we're just being honest with ourselves. I know there's a lot of, we all have confidence in what Dawn Staley has been able to do. She's been proving it since the day she got here. But to me, the fact that this team has been able to go from, okay, hey, you know what? We have the freshies, we have so much talent, to a new group, and there's a lot of talent here, but they've been able to find their own identity. They've been able to continue to find ways where it wasn't a reload. I mean, it wasn't a rebuild. It was a reload. And that's exactly what we've seen from this team this season.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, continuing to defy, expectations, right? The freshies and the best class ever and all that stuff. And it's like, all right, where's South Carolina going to be? And, I think it's a widely known fact. Whenever Dawn Staley loses in the Final Four, she's coming back for vengeance, right? Mm-hmm. We saw that not the season before they lost in the Final Four, that national championship run, or the most recent national championship run. They lost in the Final Four, right? Had their hearts kind of ripped out. It was kind of a perfect season. It was going, everything was going their way. And then, that team just came back for vengeance. I think it's similar to this year's team, right? They returned quite a bit of people, even though you lost all the freshies and kind of the headliners and your starters of that class. It was the undergrads, the Chloe Kitts, Ashlyn Swatkins, the undergrads that really took note and just came back to kick butt, right? And then you added Tahina Paupau, Camila Cardoso got that much better in the offseason, right? So this team took last year's Final Four loss, and they are coming for business. They're really, really breaking it down this season. And, Mike, we talked about, it's easier for this team to win a game, right, than it is for them to lose. It's crazy, right? And they're taking the loss from the theoretical loss. You lose at the buzzer, or you win at the buzzer yesterday, and you kind of take that and use that as motivation to what you did today. So this team is responding off of close wins, taking them as losses, and it's crazy. I think the sky really is the limit here.
Scott, I think you're spot on. It's not just a next man up mentality with this team. It's not. And I'm not trying to take anything away from the players. But what you mentioned there about players truly wanting to be here, I mean, that makes the biggest difference in the world. Being here, they love South Carolina. They love playing for Dawn Staley. That allows them to be able to buy in to the system, buy into being essentially that number in the plan, right? We've seen talented players come through here, and there's talented players on this team. But this doesn't work. This doesn't work if one player tries to go out there and tries to outshine everybody. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. I remember last year, Caitlin Clark, phenomenal basketball player. Phenomenal player. I remember last year, we were talking about Aaliyah Boston, some of the statistics, and anyone that watched South Carolina would have been able to tell you why her numbers in comparison to Clark was because it just didn't go through her. She was a big focal point of what South Carolina did, both offensively and defensively. But because there's so many talented players around her, she was able to make things happen. As to looking at Clark's situation, a little bit different. Everything went through Clark. So I say that to say, and obviously she's hucking up, more shots, 30 shots, whatever the case it was. Yeah. But I bring that up to say that, even in a situation like that, you had so many other talented players on this team, and the system still worked. They came up short last year. Worked the year prior, though. Yeah. Worked the year prior against UConn. And, the fact that this team has won 2 national championships in the last couple of years, I know could have been a third. COVID didn't happen that 2019, 2020 year, potentially. But, yeah. Scott wants me to comment. Can you comment more on the nature boy Ric Flair? See if I can bring up my Twitter here. I could share what Scott's talking about. Woo. It's pretty self-explanatory, but for those of you who might not know what Scott's talking about, you may have seen this during the game. For those of you who don't follow me on Twitter, recommend you follow me throughout the tournament. I said the nature boy wore it better. I think it's pretty self-explanatory what we're trying to get at here.
I'm not going to explain the joke for him, Mike. I get it. I think it's pretty good.
I think people understand, Scott. I think you get it too, and I'll just leave it at that.
It's a recurring theme native to the bayous of Louisiana. We'll leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that. Is right. What else we got here? But Dennis says Malaysia Fulwiley is the future of South Carolina. She is going to do major things. Major things. I said this before, but going back to watching her at Keenan and seeing the things she did as a middle schooler, it was absolutely incredible. And you just knew that she was going to be special when she got to college, especially if she came to South Carolina and had an opportunity to work with Dawn Staley. I think going back, when you look at some of the games that South Carolina had early in the year, playing over in Paris, even when Malaysia was having a lot of attention around her. Magic Johnson's tweeting about her. Kevin Durant. All these NBA stars tweeting about her. And yet she was able to continue to listen to Dawn and stay in the system. And it's not just Malaysia. Obviously Malaysia, what she did today was incredible. Absolutely incredible. And if you're just joining us, as we have close to 2,600 people watching live right now, Gamecock fans
are showing out. Yeah.
You guys are incredible. Darian says, to be the man, you got to beat the man. Yeah, and they did just that today. And they beat someone that also looked like Ric Flair in the process, too. Quadcock says, I didn't know Rick was making the transition.
No comment.
No comment on that. Again, if you guys have any comments, questions, let us know. Bruce, I see your comment. I'm going to pull it up in a minute. But let us know. Over 2,600.
You want some ads here real quick, Mike, before we forget?
No, we're going to do it later. We're going to keep it rolling for the people. Got to keep it rolling for the people. Bruce asks, why did the girl who pushed Watson not get any penalty? That's what started the fight. I think it goes back to the old saying, Bruce, unfortunately. The second person that comes in usually is the one that gets in trouble, right? So what's going to be interesting to see is when next week rolls around and you have the first round of the tournament and we're trying to see who LSU's playing and all that. And again, we're focused on the Gamecocks, but I'm sure some of us are going to be curious to see, okay, is certain player going to be suspended for LSU in that game? We have to pay attention to it. Things can change. Things can change based on what we saw today. The refs, they handled it in a manner in which they felt like it was the best they could. Certainly the game slowed down. I think the game was paused for about 20 minutes or so as they went through that laundry list of names, because obviously you had the players leaving the bench, so that's why the laundry list was long of names. But I'm going to be interested to see if anything does change. At the end of the day, personally, I don't really care as much. I know some people, some Gamecock fans will care, and I get that. But the reason why I don't care is because unless South Carolina was playing LSU, that first round matchup, I don't think it really makes that much of a difference. And that's no disrespect to the teams that South Carolina will play in the first round. That's no disrespect to the team that LSU will play in the first round. But I think we all assume that both teams will win handily, regardless of if they have Cardoso. Obviously, she will not be eligible unless there's an appeal. I want to throw that out there. We haven't heard that part. That's always a possibility. I don't think that's going to change, though. I don't think that's going to change. LSU, is there a possibility that someone? Yeah, there is a possibility, but again, South Carolina wouldn't be directly impacted, so that's why I'm not really as concerned. If South Carolina was playing LSU later this week in that matchup, then I'd have a different stance on it.
Yeah, most definitely.
Anything else stand out to you today, Joe? And again, if anyone has any comments, questions, whatever, fire away. Here's your opportunity. Over 2,700 fans watching. Gamecock fans coming out big today as South Carolina women's basketball, for the 8th time in the past 10 years, are your SEC tournament champions, just continuing to rack up award after award and title after title. And of course, netless after netless, another netless for Dawn Staley and the Gamecocks after taking care of LSU today in what was a thrilling game, a wild ending, but nonetheless a win. And that's the most important thing today for the Gamecocks.
Yeah, big game from Full Wiley, right? You're going to miss Cardoso in that first round, but again, this team, had to do it for a couple games when she was playing for Brazil. So, this team is prepared for it. They're really deep, and Full Wiley going off certainly, emphasizes that point a little bit more. But, big win today, capturing your 8th SEC title in the past 10 years. Very big for the program. Dawn Staley continuing the royalty run. 103-3 in your last 3 seasons is ridiculous. And, Mike, obviously the brawl will overshadow a lot of stuff from the game today, but, I still think South Carolina's body of work is still really impressive. I'm
going to cut you off right now, and apologies. I think someone actually just brought this up. Thank you for doing this, because I just got a text actually from someone. Obviously, we're going based off of what ESPN put out there, because the rules have really changed over the last couple of years when it comes to ejections. Not just basketball, football, whatever, really. ESPN has just put out, though, that Cardoso will only be suspended in the first half. So thank you for putting that out there, Carolina Gent 06. Cardoso will only miss the first half of the first round game that South Carolina has. So a lot, obviously, was said throughout the broadcast. ESPN tried to clarify the best they could during that time, but that has been corrected. Cardoso would be only suspended for the first half. So good news, even better news for South Carolina, with her only being out a half in comparison to being out an entire game. Bottom line, though, South Carolina should win that next game, but it's not just about that, Joe. You want to try to find that rhythm, right? You want to start getting into that rhythm. Certainly South Carolina, they were able to get into a rhythm today, but you want to be able to get into that rhythm so that throughout the tournament, you're able to be at your best. I mean, when you're in March, you want to be at your best. It goes without saying, but being able to get Cardoso, to be able to have her for at least a half will be good, because, like I said, trying to find that rhythm.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's all she needs, right? It's gonna, and she's more of an interior threat. And you have, Ashlyn Watkins, she's been great in the post. So I'm not worried about this team's ability to get it done in the post whatsoever without Cardoso. in the first half. Again, another good, correction. We appreciate all you guys, looking out for us in the comments and stuff like that. But yeah, no, so really good game today. Just way to finish. And obviously, again, the unfortunate stuff with the brawl, but I'm not faulting anybody, right? I think it's standing up for your teammate. There's nothing really wrong with that, and that's just an emotional game. It was emotional back and forth throughout the whole time.
Yeah, we're gonna have to go back and make sure ESPN is flashing a couple things, but we'll make sure that everything is corrected in the first round. So now they're saying this is. Let's see. Well, you know what? Let's see. Because there's been multiple things that ESPN saying now. Now it's all coming back and forth. We'll put that aside. Bottom line, South Carolina should win that game. Joe, any final thoughts, though, as far as what South Carolina was able to achieve this weekend? Now, I know to some, they probably felt like South Carolina wasn't playing the best basketball that they've had this season. Certainly when you're playing in March, deeper you go into any type of tournament, whether it be March Madness, whether it be the SEC tournament, competition's going to continue to pick up. Everyone looks at you as one of the premier teams in the country, and you have that target on your back. So to me, yeah, did South Carolina play their best this weekend? No, but at the same time, too, they were able to find a way to continue to win in advance. And now you have an opportunity to go back to the drawing board and figure out what do we need to do to be able to clean things up, knowing that we're heading into the NCAA tournament now. If we lose, if we come up short, it's over. There's no, okay, well, we lost this tournament. It's on to the next one. No. That's done now. You have to be able to take care of business starting later this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Firmly agree with that, Mike. And again, the perfect season is going to have to go intact now, right? You made it through the SEC tournament without a loss, so now they need to go wire to wire if they want to, complete the natty.
Yep, no question about it. Let's see, we got here. I'm trying to look at some of the stats from today. Trying to think if there's anything else that really stands out to me about what we saw from South Carolina. I really like some of the second chance opportunities that they had. I know that they got out rebounded by LSU, but I mean, you look at what South Carolina was able to do on the perimeter. They're a team that, finished 7 of 20 today. I felt like they continued to mix things up a little bit as to what they wanted to do. We've seen them, and I think that's the beauty about this team, Joe. They're a team that can beat you multiple ways. We've seen different South Carolina teams in the past that really relied heavily on going down into the paint. We've seen South Carolina teams in the past where they have relied heavily on shooting threes and being behind the arc because maybe they were a little bit smaller. I think in particular the year after Asia Wilson left. I mean, that was obviously a few years ago now. But that's what I like about this team when we talk about being built for March. Yes, we can talk about the experience as far as this is a team that went through this a year ago and came up short, and you have a lot of players still left from that team, despite the fact that you lost your starting 5, and they understand what that feeling was like. I like the fact that they can beat you multiple ways. They're not just a one-trick pony, and if they run into a team that's a bigger team, you know what? They can beat you on the outside. If they have a team that they feel like they match up well against, they can go into the paint, they're going to feed it to Cardoso. They're going to feed it to their bigs. And hopefully, players like Chloe, she's going to be able to get things going, but there's other players that have been stepping up. There's been other players stepping up, and that's the beauty about this team.
No, absolutely. It's their depth, right? We talk about it all the time, how deep this team is. I feel like I've said it like 7 times today, but it's true. With Full Wiley stepping up, it's a true testament to their depth. And against a team like LSU, too, I think it is interesting, a team that's so highly touted for their starters and, how much personality their starting 5 has and notoriety their starting 5 has. And for South Carolina to beat them with their depth, I think it's a perfect bow on, I guess, the LSU saga for now. And you could see them later on in the tournament. And I think you'd rather play them later on in the tournament than earlier on. Emotions are still going to be a little bit high if you play them earlier than later, but who knows? We'll see. I think, both teams are good enough to see each other again. And, we'll just see how it goes, but their depth, to shine on a day like today, against a team that has so much notoriety and star power with their starting five, for the depth to come up clutch like it did today for South Carolina. It's real true testament of this program and Dawn Staley and what she's doing.
So we like to share some of the comments that are said. Dawn Staley, after the game, had an opportunity to talk about what took place, and we're going to play some of that audio for you guys right now so you have a chance to be able to listen to it. This is what Dawn had to say after the game on the ESPN broadcast. Take a listen to this.
The players. It's all about the players being able to make plays on both sides of the basketball. I just want to apologize to the basketball community. When you're playing in championship games like this in our league, things get heated. No bad intentions. They just try. Their emotions got so far ahead of them that sometimes these things happen. So I want to apologize for us playing a part in that, because that's not who we are and that's not what we're about. But I'm happy for the players that were able to finish the game and get us another championship.
Coach, how will you address this with your team?
We're going to talk about it. We've always talked about it. Never leave the bench. Never get too high with the highs or low with the lows. It's hard when you're playing. I played this game a long time, and I can't tell you I was a saint at all times. Okay? Your emotions get the best of you. It's unfortunate that the players that got ejected can't be a part of the celebration. The players, it's all about.
Yeah, Joe, that's another part, and I'm glad that Dawn brought that up. That's very unfortunate. The players that were ejected not able to celebrate with their team. Where's John? John, you're spot on. Dawn shouldn't have to apologize, but that she will, and it's not just apologizing for South Carolina, because the reason I bring this up, John, we all know this, Dawn has become, I don't want to say bigger than the game, but in a lot of ways, she has become one of the faces of women's basketball, not just from a college standpoint, but I'm sure naturally she looks at the situation and she wants to make sure she puts that out there. So I agree with you, John, that she shouldn't have to, but knowing who Dawn is and knowing how much she cares about the sport, she's going to go out there and she's going to say what she has to make sure that she goes out there and respects the game of basketball, because that's just Dawn. That's who Dawn is. That's who Dawn is. She brings that up, though, and Nathan brings up, yep, Dawn's all about growing women's basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I firmly agree. I think, Dawn Staley with the kind of the post-game stuff and how that all went, she shouldn't need to apologize, right? But again, it is one of those things. I think her explanation of it all was really good, just kind of the emotions boiling over. And she knows it. As a point guard, it, because point guard, you have to get a little bit more physical. You have to play that the mind game, right? Because you're handling the ball so much, you control so much of the action, and you're just going at somebody, right? Especially as a point guard, you've got multiple different options to score. You got to get by some people. There's going to be fouls. There's going to be hand checks. It's going to be gritty and it's going to be dirty. So Dawn of anybody knows all about it.
Yeah, no, and Dawn, and we know this. I've been covering Dawn since 2016, and people see obviously a good portion of Dawn from what they see in front of the camera. I can tell you that away from the camera, she's the same type of lady. She is what you see is what you get. That's Dawn. That's Dawn. No question about it. Before we wrap things up, again, appreciate everyone that's tuning in. We're closing in on another milestone, so we're going to see if we can hit that, and then we'll wrap things up here. That is disappointing, though. You heard Dawn there, talking about it. I'm sure they brought the trophy back into the locker room, and they're going to continue to celebrate, but they're going to use this as a teaching moment. They're going to use this as a moment to say, hey, look, we have to make sure that we're better in the tournament. We have to make sure that we don't put ourselves in a situation like that whatsoever. R.L. Smith does bring up something I do want to mention. Congratulations to South Carolina hockey becoming the national champs, their club sport, but shout out to the Gamecock hockey team winning the national championship today. But of course, the big story Here is women's basketball. South Carolina, for the 8th time in the last 10 years, they are your SEC tournament champions. They now turn their attention to the NCAA tournament, trying to get back to another Final Four and being able to bring home a 3rd national championship in program history. And as we say that, we have officially hit 3,000 live viewers between Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. Thank you, Gamecock fans. What a day. We appreciate everyone that tuned in today. As we mentioned earlier, we're going to be doing post-game shows throughout the entire NCAA tournament, for men, for women. The GC crew is going to be in Nashville these next couple of days, so be sure to tune in for that. And we'll also make sure we keep you posted on everything else going on back here in Columbia, because there's going to be a lot going on from a football standpoint. Having said all that, Intern Joe, why don't you do me a favor? And let's turn on over to those ads.
Yeah, Mike, first sponsor of the day is going to be our good friends over at Liberty Tax. Taxiety is an uncertain feeling you get right before doing your taxes, but you don't have to go through alone. The Liberty Tax team, or the tax team at Liberty Tax in Irmo, Lexington, and Columbia will walk you through the process, clear up any confusion, and guarantee you'll get the biggest possible refund or your money back. It's tax time. If you're in a hurry for a refund, call on the tax team at Liberty Tax. They're fast, accurate, and guaranteed. On the other hand, if you think you might be owing Uncle Sam, talk to the Liberty Tax team to make sure you're not paying more than you should owe. They'll find every possible deduction for you. Locally owned and operated, staffed by tax professionals from your neighborhood, open 9 to 9 on weekdays and 9 to 5 on Saturdays, with multiple service options. Start through the Liberty Tax mobile app or through the desktop portal. Make an appointment or just walk in, give a call to upload your tax documents, and when you come in, your return will be ready to review and sign. Give them a call on your screen right now. And for those listening, 803-462-5576. Once again, 803-462-5576 for all of your tax needs. Mike, let's tell them about our other sponsor, Clint.Hammond. He's above us on all of our Gamecock Central live programming.
Yeah, today's show is also brought to you by our good friend Clint.Hammond over at the Movement Mortgage. Anytime you watch one of these GC live shows, you see right above our heads, Clint.Hammond has been a longtime supporter, not just GC Live, but Gamecock Central as a whole. When our very own Wes Mitchell was looking for a home, who did he call? He called Clint.Hammond. When former Gamecock quarterback and captain Perry Orth was in the process of purchasing a home, who did he call? He called Clint. Give Clint a call, and he can help you try to find the lowest rate on the market in anything else you need going through that process of purchasing a home. That number is 803-771-6933. Well, that's going to do it for today's show. Over 3,000 of you tuned in today. Well, 3,000 live at least.
The fams.
So probably even more. The fams have turned out in a big way. If you're not a subscriber to Gamecock Central, head on over to GC. I promise you, you will not be disappointed this March Madness. $1 for the first month to sign up, or we're running a special right now. Because of women's basketball, because, well, we also have a tremendous asset to our Gamecock Central team right now. These next couple weeks. So be sure to tune in. Markeisha Grant with us. We appreciate everyone that watch. If you missed any of our show today, head on over to the Gamecock Central YouTube page where you can replay this show in its entirety. That is free. Hit the little bell icon to make sure that you get a notification right to your phone. You can also watch these on your laptop, computer, TV even, but you'll get a notification anytime one of these GC Live videos, as well as if you guys want to catch Don Staley and some of the players talk, you'll get a notification too, because we share everything to GC Live as well as original content from Gamecock Central. Or if you're a podcast listener, head on over to the GC Podcast Network, where you can also listen to not just these shows, but the other shows that appear through the Gamecock Central hemisphere, which you can catch some of those shows on 107.5 The Game. We put that on Gamecock Central podcast platform. That is called the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. We also have Garnet Trust interviews, which include former players, but also current players, women's basketball players in there as well. Thank you to everyone that tuned in today. It was a lot of fun. Looking forward to hopefully what will be a long march and a long run in the NCAA tournament as we continue to get ready for what will be hopefully an exciting March for both the men and women's basketball program. He's Intern Joe. I'm Mike Yuva. Thank you again for tuning in to the GC Live post-game show. We will catch you later this week, but enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And we'll wait tomorrow. South Carolina, they'll find out where they are headed to and who they are playing in the first round of the 2024 NCAA tournament. Your Gamecocks, SEC tournament champions for an 8th time in program history. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and we will catch you later this week on Gamecock.